For those of you wondering, I'm actually driving my car right now. I'm behind the wheel of the car, and I'm hosting the radio show at the same time. I am at the red light, and people are looking at me like, what are you doing with a headset on? And I'm getting ready to talk to KC Joyner. That's what I'm doing. Stop looking at me like that.
That's amazing.
Right. KC, welcome aboard. You are the first guest while I'm driving my car.
Hey, it's a red letter day.
Yes, I'm on my way to call the football game tonight, but modern technology has me able to host the radio show right here behind the wheel at a red light on my way there. So, as we do every Friday, one thought every game, the matchups to watch between the Eagles and the Browns. So let's get into this Eagles-Browns matchup because I want to start with this. Myles Garrett out for the game on Sunday. How much does that change your perception of this particular game?
I think it's going to, people are going to look at his pass rushing ability, and I think that's going to be obviously a big factor. But I've got the Browns rated as a red-rated run defense, meaning that it's a tough matchup. It's not a matchup you would expect to win, and he's a guy who disrupts a lot of plays. We talk about the Eagles over the years about them being one-gap disruptors and getting up the field. He does a lot of that. So putting him out of there and putting somebody else in there, it probably turns a couple 3-4 running plays that would have been bad running plays into good ones. So, it could be 30, 40 yards there, and you add in the pass rush. That could be a big factor in this contest.
Right. We talked to Jake Trotter from ESPN NFL Nation who covers the Browns. He really felt like when Garrett is not on the field for them, they have big problems. How are they linebacker secondary? If the strength of their team might be up front, he has 9.5 of their 12.5 sacks, so obviously he's a big factor in their pass rush. But what does the rest of their defense look like?
Don't like the matchup with Denzel Ward. He looks like he would probably face Rager. People move around in coverage a lot, so you never know. But he's the guy you want to avoid in coverage. There probably depends on the injury report, but they're slated possibly to have Greedy Williams and Terrence Mitchell as their corners. If they don't, they've got backups there. Those are both, even those two as starters, would be guys you could possibly target, and their backups would be even more favorable. What I'm worried about for the Eagles is Ronnie Harrison and Andrew Sendejo, the strong and free safeties for the Browns. They're both red-rated. They do a very good job of slowing tight ends down, and Sendejo stops vertical passing, and they've played a lot of good defense of late. So if I'm the Eagles, I'm not thinking I can turn this into a high-scoring contest.
All right, one area, the Eagles they don't like to run the ball enough for our liking, but they run the ball well. Miles Sanders does a good job. I think they have good scheme up front. When you look at the Eagles' offensive line, it's going to be back to almost full health. Sayamala's back, Peters and Johnson are going to be the tackles here. It looks like Nate Herbigel should be back. So this might be their best offensive line of the season. Is there room to run against a Myles Garrett-less defensive front?
Absolutely, and I think they should be thinking about trying to get Boston Scott as many as 10 carries in this contest. I think they don't need to just funnel everything through Sanders. I think that Scott has shown he's been the best back I've seen so far this year, or maybe one of the best at reading blocks and making the most out of blocks and cutting back if he sees opportunities. A lot of backs just go where they're supposed to. He's got very good vision, so I'd like to see them incorporate him in there and do a lot of that of the ground game, because if you've got a secondary that's not giving up vertical passes, and the Eagles didn't complete one vertical pass last week, then why bother trying to do that unless you're doing it as a counterpunch? So I'd love to see them run the ball 25-plus times in this contest.
You look at Carson Wentz, and obviously he's had the inaccuracy issues here. Doug Peterson talked about moving him out of the pocket, getting him, out of the pocket a little bit more. Is that the recipe for success, or is that a short-term fix for this team?
I think that'd be more of a short-term fix for this team. Getting some health at receiver obviously would help them and such. But I do like the matchups again against Williams and Mitchell, or if they end up having backups in there. These are not shutdown matchups. And Ward, even I've got him rated as a red-rated corner. He's been a bit hit or miss. It's not like you can't go to him, but I think you're going to have to, if you're going to get vertical passes in this contest, you're probably going to have to play call them. And the thing is, when you get out of the pocket like that, if you're doing half rolls, things of that nature, you're cutting down how much of the field you can attack vertically. You can't do full field reads. So I understand why they would do it, but I would rather see them try and get in a heavy running game and then try and go vertical passing to play action fakes to go vertical rather than try and cut the field in half.
We know Cleveland likes to run. They run it really well. Philly is, they're typically a good run-stopping team But how do you like the matchup with their offensive line, the Cleveland offensive line, Chubb and obviously Kareem Hunt matched up against this Eagle? Typically, now it's interesting because, in today's game, you only play 2 linebackers, but is this a game where maybe you say, let's get a third linebacker, play an old traditional 4-3?
I think they need to go heavy on it because the Eagles, when you look at their run numbers against running backs, they're every bit as dominant as they've been in past years. Their problem is scrambling quarterbacks or planned runs like last week with Daniel Jones. That's not what Mayfield does. He has some mobility. He's not a great rushing quarterback, so you don't have to worry as much about that. You don't have to worry about Brandon Graham and whether or not he's going to bite heavy on a zone reads like he's been doing all year long. It's not something that I would think that I have to worry so much about. But yet, the thing about the Browns, though, run blocking early in the year, first quarter of the season, I thought they were the best run blocking team in the league. They're still good. They've had some injuries up front. They're not quite as good. So I think the Eagles can at least go toe-to-toe with them. And, in fact, I'm probably giving them a bit of an advantage if you're just talking run blocking for running backs.
And then Baker Mayfield in the past game, he lost OBJ. Hooper is a good tight end. They still have Landry. Where do you see that matchup? Is there a chance for them to say, hey, you know what, Baker, we need you to win this game?
They could. The thing about the Browns is they had, if I remember correctly, they've had 5 games where they've scored before last week's game, which was a low-scoring game. It was all because of weather. I kind of throw last week's game out when I'm looking at the Browns for the whole year. But they had 5 games where they scored 30 or more points. They win all of them. And then they had 3 games where they scored 10 or fewer points, or fewer than 10 points. They're very boom-bust offense, and I think that they're predicated on their ground game, so that's why I really want to stop the ground game. I'm not worried so much about the matchups in the passing game. Landry's good, but Roby Coleman can probably keep up. I am worried a bit about the tight end coverage because Mills hasn't been very good, and Hooper is good, but I don't think that's a huge mismatch. And Slay and Maddox, we're going to be covering Higgins and Kadarrell Hodge is probably going to be their split into this game. They don't have much to worry about from the outside receivers.
All right, we'll get your thoughts. And if you look at one significant advantage in this game, where do you see where that big mismatch is that could be the decisive factor?
I do worry a bit about that matchup of the Browns tight end versus Mills. But if I've got to pick anything in there, I would say that it's the Eagles rushing defense, because if the Browns can't run the ball, and if the games when they didn't score any points, their running game was the lack of a running game is what caused them that problems. If the Eagles can win that, and again, I think they can win that. If they win that battle, they'll win this contest.
All right, we'll get your pick on the game in just a second with KC Joyner. But first, let's get one thought on every Week 11 game. We'll run down the schedule, get Casey's take on each one. We start off with New Orleans, where Taysom Hill is reportedly going to be the quarterback of this game against the Falcons. How does that change things?
It changes it some. I think the reason they're putting Hill in there versus Winston is because Winston threw 30 interceptions last year, and I think that Sean Payton says, I'm not going to risk having a guy who might throw a couple of interceptions in this contest. I think they'll still rotate Winston in. I think they'll have packages for both of them. Atlanta's been really consistent, though, by the way. 320 more offensive yards in every game this season, and the Falcons have won 3 of the past 4, but I still think New Orleans gets more out of its talent than any other team, so I'm picking them in this one.
Cincinnati and Washington, obviously tough years for both these teams. Washington's still in the mix for the division. They might have the best quarterback in the division.
They might, and Alex Smith is their best quarterback. Their third-string quarterback turned out to be their best. Now, Cincinnati's offense did great earlier this year, and I'm still thinking of Burrow as the offensive rookie of the year, but the Bengals have now posted fewer than 250 net passing yards in 3 of the past 5 games, and Washington has allowed more than 250 net passing yards only 3 times this year. Cincinnati has also allowed 20 or more points in every game this year, so I'm picking Washington.
All right, that one, of course, NFC East fans will keep an eye on. If Washington wins, they stay in the mix. Detroit, Carolina, not a lot at stake here. Carolina's defense has been pretty bad. No CMC. Detroit, no identity.
No identity, and now they're missing Galladay and Amendola as well, so they're going to have some big problems. The thing for them is that Detroit won 4 of its last 7, but it took Gurley's gaffe and it took Chase Young's crazy hit last week, or late hit on Matt Stafford, to lead to both wins. So Carolina has not been as consistent. I'm still picking Detroit in this one because they've shown more offensive consistency, but honestly, their wide receiver injuries kind of make this a total toss-up game.
All right, Pittsburgh and Jacksonville, you've mentioned it over our years. Tomlining, is this a clear game where that could be a factor here? Jacksonville fought hard last week, and obviously Pittsburgh's been scared the last couple of weeks in heavy favorite situations.
that might be the thing that keeps them from Tomlining, is that they've done it of late and they've still gotten through it. Although they didn't Tomlin last week. They played a great game the entire game. Their receiving core is so good that Ben Roethlisberger recently said that they don't even have the letters X, Y, and F for the receivers. Anybody can play anywhere, which is a rarity, especially when you've got a rookie there. So I think they still win this big. The problem I have a concern for them is that they're going to look forward to Baltimore, but I just think the talent disparity is too big to have Jacksonville get a win.
Speaking of Baltimore, it's a rematch of the playoffs. It's Tennessee and Baltimore. The Ravens lost that game on Monday night. Tennessee's had their problems as well.
This is going to be a real tough one. The Ravens They just posted their lowest point total of the year. They've only thrown for 200 or more passing yards in 3 games this year. The Titans, they've averaged 87 rushing yards per game against Pittsburgh and Chicago two of the past 3 weeks. So their rushing game hasn't been doing so well. So I'm going to pick Baltimore because of home field advantage. But honestly, this one could go either way. This is another one of those total toss-up games in Week 11.
New England goes to Houston. Houston's obviously had struggles all season long. You got the Patriots who come off that win. They turned into a power run football team. Do they stick with it?
I mentioned that to people. I thought that before last week, people were ready to quote Gorilla Monsoon and stick the fork in the Patriots and say they're done. But that's not the case. Obviously, what they did against Baltimore. And mind you, the Patriots have a very good rushing attack, and Houston has allowed 160 more rushing yards in 6 games this year. So I think the Patriots are going to be able to establish the ground game even with Burkhead out, and I think they'll get a lot of ground yards, and I think they win that one.
All right, that could bring them back into the playoff mix, by the way, if they were somehow get a win in that one. Another one, and talked about playoffs here, it is the Dolphins and their playoff possibility here. They could be in the division mix if they can get a win at Denver.
Amazing, and they are. We've been talking since early in the season about Brian Flores being Coach of the Year, and I would absolutely give him that Coach of the Year right now. I think they might even be a top 5 team in the league. They're playing that well. They've racked up at least 1 takeaway in every contest. They've allowed fewer than 200 net passing yards in 3 of the past 5. They've also scored 91 points over the past 3 weeks, so they're getting it done on both sides of the ball. And Denver's got all kinds of injuries. Drew Lock probably doesn't play, and you add all of that in together the way Miami's playing, it's one of the most confident pick of the weeks.
All right, Jets and Chargers. Not a great one, but 2 young quarterbacks. Darnold, who I don't know what to think about what his future is going to be, but Justin Herbert, we like him a lot.
I think Sam Darnold's future is going to be with another team. Imagine if Pittsburgh were to get him and get another 5, 6, 7 years out of him, what he could do if they were to develop him if Roethlisberger retires. But Herbert, he led the Colts to 5 games with 400 more offensive yards, and he should make it 6 against the Jets defense that's allowed 400 more offensive yards in 3 straight games. Mind you, the Jets also just lost 2 of their top cornerbacks, too, so they're down to 6 and 7 stringers back there. So I think the Chargers are big in this one.
All right, Green Bay, Indy, good game this week. You got the Colts, who, a lot of people still not sold on them yet. This could be a week that they're coming out party.
Yeah. The thing about the Packers is they've won 3 of their last 5. They got blown up by Tampa Bay, though. They got run over by Minnesota. They beat an injury-obliterated 49ers club, and they let the Jaguars go toe-to-toe with them. So I don't think they're anywhere near as good as their record says that they are. The Colts have won every game of this year with posted 1 or 0 giveaways. The Packers have generated 2 takeaways in only 1 game this year. So I don't think the Packers get enough turnovers to win this one, so I'm taking the Colts.
All right, Dallas and Minnesota. Oddly, both these teams are still in the playoff mix. They both had very disappointing seasons. If Dallas wins, they're in the mix. Minnesota wins, they are in the wild card mix.
It's incredible to think the Vikings are there, but they have 557 yards and 6 takeaways in their 3-game winning streak, and their defense just had its best game of the year by shutting down Chicago. The Cowboys' offense will get better with Andy Dalton back, but the Cowboys have allowed 200 or more rushing yards in 3 of their last 6 games, and you're doing that against Dalvin Cook and Alexander Madison. I think that Minnesota gets 200 or more rushing yards and wins this one handily.
Good Sunday night game. We'll have it for you live on 97.3 ESPN. By the way, Dallas and Minnesota will be on after Eagles and Browns. Kansas City, Vegas. Vegas won this game last time. It was a shootout. There's some bad blood going on here right now. The old classic AFC West game here. And Vegas is saying, hey, we're not only in the playoff mix. If we can win this game, we're in the division mix.
I think that I was looking at NFL Pick Watch earlier a couple of days ago, and almost everybody picked Kansas City. I'm like, Raiders just beat these guys. The Raiders have rushed for 160 more rushing yards in 3 straight games. The Chiefs' rush defense is their weakness, and they've given us 150 more rushing yards in 5 games this year, and they've not shown that they can consistently hold up to top-flight run blocking. The Raiders are probably the best run-blocking team in the league right now, so I think the Raiders have more paths to victory, and I'm picking them.
All right, you like the Vegas Raiders in that game. That would be a big one. That would be something we would be talking about on Monday when KC Joyner returns for One Thought on every game in Week 11. And, of course, he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. But before KC runs, he has to give us his pick. Who wins Eagles, Browns, and why on Sunday?
This is one of those games where, the talent level would say that the Eagles or the Browns would win this one, and I usually go with that. I think the Eagles have a lot of path to victory. Having Garrett out is going to help. I'm probably going to pick Cleveland, but I do these confidence picks for Pick Watch, and I had Cleveland as a 2 before Garrett left, or as a 4 before Garrett left. I've got him as a 2 now probably, and I think this is a toss-up contest. But I'm picking Cleveland in large part because it's at home and because I think Wentz is still too turnover prone.
All right. He didn't turn the ball over last week, first time all season long, but we'll see how it goes right here on 97.3 ESPN. Merrill Reese, Mike Quick, they have the call, 1 o'clock. And, of course, KC Joyner will be back on Monday for One Thought on every game. KC, enjoy the football.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you, Mike.